Do you want to write a book that is irresistible to readers? In this video, I'm sharing the 3 secret ingredients that separate the okay or even good books from the great books that have lasting impacts on their readers and make readers want to return to them time and time again. This video is going to be focused on how to write strong commercial fiction. This is not about writing more genre fiction or more niche literary fiction. This is focused more on the commercial fiction that will appeal to larger numbers of people. I'm not arguing that every book has to have all 3 of these things. Writing more niche literary fiction is very important, and the stories that don't hit each of these 3 marks are also important to write. Also, I think this goes without saying, but in this video, I also use examples from movies and am talking more generally about stories, not only about books. So this is about crafting really memorable, appealing stories that can be told in book form, but don't necessarily have to be told in book form. So I use examples that aren't books. So don't come at me in the comment section and be like, well, this wasn't a book, because we're talking about stories. Okay, moving on. So the first thing that your story needs to be in order to quickly capture the attention of your readers is that it needs to be high concept. High concept is a big publishing industry buzzword that you might have heard before. But what exactly does it mean? A high concept idea is a striking idea that is highly marketable with broad commercial appeal that is easily understandable through a very short pitch. And reading this very short pitch tells readers exactly what to expect from the book. Not every idea is a high concept idea. If you struggle to explain to people what your book idea is about, or find yourself unable to explain it without explaining a ton of different moving parts, then your idea may not be high concept. There is nothing wrong with this. Not every story has to be high concept, but you will find that a lot of the big commercial blockbuster bestseller type stories tend to be high concept because they're really easy to pitch and to get across to editors and agents and publishing people as well as readers. You don't have a lot of time to sell a reader on your book when they're reading the book blurb, and so if you have a high concept idea, it's way easier to convey exactly what the story is about and what the reader should expect, and if it's a very compelling idea, they are more likely to purchase that book instead of a book that has a blurb that maybe is more complicated or convoluted or is not as easy to understand. Some high concept ideas can be boiled down into just a couple of words, especially if you have comps in the pitch, like Pride and Prejudice with zombies. Very short, very concise. Pride and Prejudice with zombies. Gives you a pretty good idea of what the book is about. Cinder by Marissa Meyer can simply be pitched as Cinderella, but with cyborgs. But other high concept pitches are not that short and don't use any comp titles in the pitch itself. Let's look at some examples. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton has a very simple high concept pitch. Scientists bring dinosaurs back to life and they break loose in a theme park. You immediately get what the book is about. You can picture it in your mind. You can picture the dinosaurs in the theme park, somehow dinosaurs in the modern era. It's very compelling. It's very visual. Immediately the stakes are super clear because you can see the fact that dinosaurs being loose in a theme park is not going to be good. There's going to be a lot of danger, it's going to be exciting, and it's just one simple sentence that conveys all of that information. Let's take The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. In a dystopian future, teens are forced to fight to the death on live TV. Again, really easy to understand, really easy to picture. Teenagers fighting to the death, you don't know what the context is, you don't know the history, you don't know what the arena looks like, you don't know what the rules are, but the use of live TV, you could even add on a reality television show, and people know what a reality TV show is, and so picturing people fighting to the death on a reality TV show immediately is compelling. You get the danger, you get the competition element. People may not know the specifics, but they know enough that they want to see how this idea plays out. And it's easy to summarize in just a simple sentence. The Martian by Andy Weir can be simply pitched as an astronaut is stranded on Mars and must use science to survive. Very clear, very simple, gets the stakes across really easy. Or Freaky Friday is also high concept. Mother and daughter switch bodies for a week. It immediately tells you the stakes, something about the characters, and an idea for what the plot is going to look like in just a couple of words. So all of this makes sense on a conceptual level, but how do you come up with a high concept idea? Unfortunately, there are no tricks or shortcuts to doing this. You just have to do a lot of brainstorming. If you want to start from scratch and you're not currently working on a project right now and you want to write something high concept, a common structure for a pitch that works pretty well is the X meets Y pitch. Something like Cinderella in space, or Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Something familiar that people will know immediately upon hearing it, with something fresh or unexpected. Your comps need to be very specific and interesting. You don't want to just say like The Hunger Games meets Harry Potter, because that's not specific enough to immediately be high concept. You can pick Harry Potter, but then the thing that you have that twists it into something new has to be different and unique. Like The Bachelor, but with murder. If you already have an idea for a project and you're looking to see if it is high concept, or if you are looking to edit it or tweak it so that it becomes high concept, one strategy you can do is try to boil it down into 10 words or less. Summarize your book in 10 words or less. Try to write 20 sentences that are 10 words or less describing the plot of your book, and then one of them might be interesting. If you have a really tough time doing this, then your story might not be high concept. Or if that sentence that you choose doesn't really capture the essence of the book, you might have an idea as to how you can take that story and make it high concept by focusing on what you have in your one sentence pitch. You can also take your inciting incident and write a sentence around that. Like, boy meets girl is not that interesting, but boy meets girl who tries to murder him on their first date, more interesting. Your pitch can take an existing idea that people are familiar with and put a new twist on it that is fresh and exciting and unexpected. So now you have a high concept story. What is the second secret ingredient to making that story unputdownable? We're going to assume you already have great writing, strong characters, an interesting, engaging setting. What you need is a major theme. I'm not talking about love or growing up or any vague themes like that. I'm talking about an invisible thematic element that ties your story together. It is told within the physical elements of your story and is the unspoken story that hangs all of the elements of your story together to make sure that you deliver a satisfying narrative to your readers. I read a book a couple of years ago that explains this concept really well. I interviewed the author of that book twice on my YouTube channel, and I've linked those videos in the description of this one if you're interested in listening to him explain it. But the summary of the idea is that in every story, there is a physical layer to the story, which is the actual plot that happens, like detective goes and solves crime. But in every story, there's also an invisible layer in that story that is about something different than what the physical element is. Take Finding Nemo. In Finding Nemo, Marlin goes on an adventure to go find his son Nemo and bring him home. That is the physical layer of the story. But underneath all of that, what's really going on is that Marlin goes through a transformative journey where he learns to be a better parent to Nemo. He starts out the story being really overprotective, and he ends the story giving Nemo the space that he needs and trusting Nemo to grow up. And all of the physical elements of the story help propel him from being that overprotective parent to being a more relaxed parent. Finding Nemo poses the question, is it better for you to be an overprotective parent or to give your children the space to self-actualize on their own? And the movie plays with two sides to this question throughout the entire plot. There are scenes where Marlin is really overprotective and then something goes wrong. There are scenes where he gives Nemo some space and things go right. There are some scenes where he's really overprotective and things go right. And it's like the movie is trying to figure out and go back and forth and figure out which one is really the right answer to this question. But ultimately in the climax, Marlin is presented with an opportunity where he has to make a decision as to whether he's going to be overprotective or lax. And when he chooses to give Nemo space, Nemo is able to save the day and save Dory and save all of the other fish in the net. If Marlin had chosen wrong, Dory and all of those other fish would have died. There are not very many of these invisible stories within the stories that we consume. tons of movies and books tell the same story, just through different physical elements. I'm sure you could find another story that shows a parent's changing approach to parenting that is not Finding Nemo and very different from Finding Nemo, but tells the same story inside. The thematic question that you choose for your story can inform how you structure your ending and how you choose which scenes to include in your story or not. It makes sure that you have a story that hangs together and has a satisfying ending for your readers. If your story can hit the mark at the ending in this invisible layer, you're going to deliver that satisfying feeling to your readers. They're not going to walk away from that thinking that something was missing. It's going to hang together like a complete unit and be very satisfying. You want your invisible layer to appeal to those really deep human emotions, because then it's more likely that your readers are going to emotionally connect to your book and that it will have a lasting impact on them after they finish reading. This is a very deep and complicated topic. So if you're interested in learning more about this and really diving into what an invisible layer versus a physical layer is, I highly recommend going and watching the interviews that I had with Maxwell Alexander Drake, where we break this topic down, or going and picking up a copy of the book that he wrote called Dynamic Story Creation, which is one of the best books on writing I've ever read. This video is in no way sponsored by that book or by that author. It is a fantastic resource and I highly recommend it. So if you have a story that is high concept and that has an invisible layer and major theme woven into it, the third thing that you need to make your story irresistible to readers is that you want it to appeal to them psychologically. From a psychological perspective, people have certain things that they like to consume in books. I listened to a wonderful talk by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She's a young adult author and a psychologist, and had many very interesting things to say about the way that human brains interact with fiction and how we as authors can use that to our advantage when crafting our book ideas. She compared reading a piece of commercial fiction to eating a slice of cheesecake. People read commercial fiction for pleasure. They read to enjoy the story, to connect with the characters, to experience something that is pleasurable to them. So it's our job to create the most pleasurable piece of fiction possible. And to do this, there are certain buttons that we can push that just scratch pleasurable itches in the human brain. These are concepts that can be translated into story elements, and the more of these that we pack into our story, the more pleasurable it will be to consume. These buttons are touch, danger, power, beauty, wealth, and competition. Most of these are very straightforward. If you want to include touch in your story, you can have a romance subplot or characters that are physically touching each other in some sort of romantic or meaningful way. This kind of human connection that we crave to read about. If you want to have beauty, you can have an amazingly beautiful society. You can have a really attractive main character or love interest. You can have a really cool outfit or like pageant where everybody is wearing really fancy outfits, or there's some sort of makeover scene. Wealth can look very different. You can have a beautiful beach house in Cape Cod. You can have an amazingly wealthy family and then the patriarch gets murdered, but they have an amazing house and they have tons of money and are dripping with money. You can have it like in The Great Gatsby, where everybody has lots of money and they have crazy big parties. Including these sorts of elements just makes a book that much more exciting to read about. And if you can combine that with having a high concept idea and having an invisible theme that connects to people's emotions, then you're going to have an idea that is firing on all cylinders. And if you can find a way to get those psychological buttons into your high concept pitch, even better. Like in the pitch for the Hunger Games, saying that teens will be forced to fight to the death on live TV immediately conveys some sort of competition. The reality TV show segment also implies there could be some sort of beauty or power element or button in there, especially if something is or if the teens are being forced to fight to the death, there will be something that has power over them. If you're looking for an example of a story that hits every single one of these buttons on the head, I highly recommend going and looking at The Hunger Games because it does this beautifully. I also made a video diving deeper into all of these buttons and explaining in detail what they mean, so if you're interested in going and checking that out, I've linked it in the description of this video as well. So those are the 3 elements you need to write commercial fiction that is irresistible to your readers. I hope this video is helpful to you. If it was, I'd be super grateful if you could take a minute to like the video and also subscribe to my channel. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning author who makes videos on this channel sharing actionable writing tips that helped me make my own writing better. I'm the author of the paranormal thriller They Stay series, which tell the story of a 16-year-old girl whose younger brother goes missing and gets kidnapped by an evil necromancer, and she and her outcast friends have to work together to try and stop him. Are you writing a book right now that is high concept? I would be super interested to see what your pitch is for that, and if you have any tips for how you came up with the high concept idea. And if you have any questions about the physical layer versus the invisible layer and your major thematic question, or about the psychology of writing, please let me know in the comment section below. I love having conversations about this stuff and would be super happy to answer any of your questions to the best of my ability. I hope you have a fantastic week, everybody, and as always, happy writing.